Thank you, Priyanka, for such a warm welcome for all of us. And thank you to everyone being here tonight. And thank you, Dia, Anju, and Namrata. It's really such a privilege and honor to be in company of such nonconformist and strong women I look up to, who are an inspiration to me. And thank you for being here tonight with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Just wanted to say a very big thank you for having us, Saachi, and for having this conversation. I know you've been at it for a very long time, longer than most people thought it to be important enough to. So thank you for keeping the spotlight on sustainability consistently. Thank you.
We started the journey with the Constellation series last week in New Delhi. We had Nikhil Mehra, Gaurav J. Gupta, and Anjul Bhandari on the panel. And one of the foremost things that we all agreed upon was this is the first time in fashion, in the history of fashion, that fashion is not viewed as frivolous any longer, but actually fashion forward. And I want to add that it is also the first time, and after a very long time, that the spotlight is actually on India. And I want to jump right in with all three of you and open the discussion by first discussing the Dior show in India that happened last year, which was actually a mammoth moment for India in the global space of fashion. So, do you feel the richness of India's crafts, its artistry, its craftsmanship? Do you think that now we have finally got the respect that we deserved for a very long time?
I have the mic, so I'm going to go first. Have we got the respect? I think what Maria Grazia did was a huge step, especially Dior being such a top luxury label that it is, and her being such a strong feminist. All her shows have always sort of brought the spotlight on her, and they've been very inclusive where gender and craft are concerned. But what she did, and I was, watching and viewing, and I knew all the teams involved here. She actually flew down 250 journalists from all over the world, name the magazine, name the country, and they were here. So historically, India has long been part of the supply chain to Europe, whether it's jewelry or textile or embroidery, for hundreds of years. But nobody has sort of given India the respect and the acknowledgement that, we got this from India, this was made in India, this was designed in India. Things that were taken from India were renamed, like paisley, for example, or chintz, stuff like that. But what she did was she made India her partner. She made the artisans who embroider for all the luxury labels, not just Dior. She brought everybody to their country, to their home, and sort of put paid back into what we really do, which is really a partnership, right? It may be their name on the outfit, but the work is equally the person who sort of makes it, not just tailors it or not just sticks a label on it. And I think that was a very, very big step for us. Have we got the respect we deserve? It is a big step, but I think Indian craft will truly be in a good place when it is not associated with being impoverished, when it is not a struggle for livelihood, when it's really treated like the luxury item that it is.
And the point you made on parity especially, and Anju, I want to bring you into the discussion here because as a designer, what's your take on this?
Well, as far as our craft is concerned, it's inherently been in our culture since thousands of years. And well, if we go back in those days, before the Britishers had come to our country, so our craft had that kind of respect because the weavers, the artisans used to make beautiful stuff and gift it to the kings and the people over there, the respectable people, and even the richer kind of people who could afford it, they used to buy them, and they had the weavers and the artisans used to enjoy that respectable situation, the respectable reputation in the country. But of course, with whatever the situations were, unfortunately, the Britishers, the British Raj, I'm saying it openly, yes, but that has kind of completely destroyed our own inherent quality, our own artistic handmade beauty. But by good luck, I would say that it still carried on, it still is revived. And now at this stage, with this digital, the digital world has made it possible for this craft of ours to go to all over the world. And the Dior had come, they had seen, they made it, brought it to the next level, to the much more respectable level, acceptable level. So I will be much more happy if our own country people, our own generation, the younger generation like you guys, if they can accept it in their day-to-day life. And it does require a bit of a contemporarization of the designs. We do need to reinvent the look to the contemporary usage of today's lifestyle. So that is where the designers and even the Dior, it has kind of given it a completely new modern look. So that part is still to be done with a lot of artisans. But I will be more happy if we designers can reinvent and the younger generation can adapt it in their daily lifestyle.
So you're talking about design intervention here, and that's a very important point because a lot of people talk about contemporarizing the crafts that we have for it to really get that respect. And you've unequivocally always been really proud of wearing what is proudly made in India, whether it's contemporarized or not. So how do you feel about today if Indian crafts are actually getting that respect?
So, sustainability is so deeply tied into uplifting and supporting crafts and livelihoods of artisans. And I think there's been a very, very conscious effort made by governments and, of course, by designers such as Anju Modi, who's, I think, a wonderful example of an individual who has really, literally been responsible in not just reigniting the consumers' imagination and understanding for heritage crafts and the beauty that our artisans convey through the craft that they do, but also to make it accessible. And like her, there have been several other Indian designers who've supported the livelihoods, who've literally improved what was fast becoming an extinction of artisans in the country. There were so many who were very, very challenged by the enormity of the economic gaps that they were experiencing. The fact that a lot of them were being manipulated by the middleman. They weren't getting their due. They weren't getting access to the funds that their garments that they would handcraft or the saris that they would handcraft would get in the market. And so there are more and more people now who are making all of that accessible. So fair wages, fair and healthy work environments, and of course, enhancing and making the craft accessible to the modern Indian consumer. These are aspects that have helped tremendously. As a champion for sustainable clothing and as a champion for local craft and heritage, I've always believed that in a world that is consumed by fast fashion and is constantly looking to wearing and discarding and not really valuing the human story behind every garment, it's so important and relevant for individuals to know the story and the journey of a piece of garment that they're wearing. Every piece of embroidery has so much history and legacy and is carrying such richness of heritage, whether it's Kutch work or it's, the tie and dye or it's Mukesh or it's Zardozi. orchids, or the kind of textiles that we have, the kind of dyes we have. The world has always learned so much from what we already know, and thankfully now the world is relearning all that we've known. But more importantly, India is relearning how to value, appreciate, and empower the arts that we have, and especially Indian craft. I want to highlight here that there was a time 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago when you went into rural India and you saw a diversity of color and a richness of heritage, even in the locals. So it's not like a Maheshwari sari could only be worn or accessed by a wealthy person. It was something that local women wore from the region or the state. And similarly, I'm talking about every textile that our country had. And then polyester came in and changed everything. And now we're trying to undo that damage and help people, especially women and girls and men in grassroots communities, to go back to celebrating their heritage, go back to wearing their traditional attire. And I feel such great pride every time I wear an Indian outfit. And Indian is such an elaborate space. There's so much diversity and so much to have fun with that, I do believe the world is beginning to recognize it. But more importantly, India needs to recognize and celebrate it. Sorry, it went into a bit of a long space, but that's the reality.
Nicely put it that, we've always have had the luxury in the details. It's not that we've had to be very rich to afford a Maheshwari sari or an ikat. It's been really rooted in really a part of the culture that we've been in. And Anjuji, you've been working in the space for like years now. 1990s, you started working with Sari and, working with real Sari and getting the craft, reviving local crafts in the original heritage format in the way they used to originally make. Do you also really feel that this rooted in our ethos to be extremely slow and mindful in our approach of design? And do you think it's from the grassroots level to any level, any echelons of Indian society, we're really rooted in slow and mindful living?
I think I can talk about my starting of my journey. I started going to these remote, beautiful villages in 1990, and that's where my journey learning started. And the way they used to be so happy in their beautiful homes in the southern region, especially, they used to do the rangoli in front of their homes, and the very slow life in a meaningful way. And their homes ceiling used to have the all the hangs of the threads and beautiful colorful hangs. So I learned the crafts from these artisans. I call them my gurus, and I imbibed the whole culture. And they have always, whatever they are weaving or kind of either doing any kind of printing or embroidery, whatever craft they are doing in their regions, there is always some kind of a story attached to that. Some kind of a narrative is there. So if I go to Kutch and if I see those bandhani, so they call it Chandrakonia, Ambadal, things like that, and they do those Raidana, beautiful small little dots, and the women of the home will keep doing that, and then they dye it and all that. So this is something which is so very in their DNA, and I kind of got it intuitively in my own design vocabulary. So somehow instinctively I keep doing these kind of stuff, and then I realized that you need to do much more research. What they were doing, there is much more which goes back some 500 years or maybe more than that. So I enjoyed doing those research. Then I kind of enjoyed doing the revival of certain techniques somewhere, which is, I remember one of the trips to Gujarat, Ridrol is a village. They used to do kimkhab. Now they call it ashavali. So that weaving was going extinct. And that's done with a beautiful untwisted yarn with the real zari and everything. So I kind of revived them. And as I had the platform to sell it. And then by God's grace, I had the certain people who would understand and appreciate these heritage designs of ours. So it was like, like you need to complete that cycle. Okay, they are making, I'm the person who is getting it made and then selling it. So it has to complete the cycle of making, selling, then going back to the person who is making it. So I got involved with this kind of a whole exercise, which is still I'm doing, but now so much of you can say the handloom is taking a little more expensive space because of the power loom has come into play, and things are polyester is coming into play. So these blends are kind of spoiling it. But at the same time, the beauty, the meditative kind of a feel, the holistic and harmony in the kind of pieces what they are making is still so very desirable by each and every one.
So agree with her.
Yeah.
I'm quickly jumping in to add to her answer. I've always felt that, clothes carry vibrations, like the energy of the hands that have crafted them. And when something has been made mindfully, consciously, with a sense of peace and happiness, you almost feel it when you wear it. It's quite surreal. So I totally agree. And I think India has always known how to live mindfully.
Absolutely. I think that's a very interesting point about clothes carrying vibrations, and I'm going to come back to this point a little later in our conversation, because there's a lot happening in the rental space that I want to talk about, and how India is kind of culturally moving towards there. But the more important point here is not much is spoken about the hidden supply chains and the artisans, like you just said, people in the supply chains who are working and creating and needing that kind of assistance, respect, and support. And Namrata, you started Baradri as a fundraiser for the artisans during the pandemic. Do you feel that in the Eastern, and more specifically the India dialogue on sustainability, needs to lay far more emphasis on the artisans today than we actually are?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the story of Indian fashion is really the story of Indian craft. We don't exist without it. And every designer that is an Indian designer, whether they make ethnic clothes or something like what I'm wearing, which is both of them are Indian brands and both are handloom. But the thing is that we cannot do anything without the dint of artisans. We build our businesses on, what we call cheap labor that India sort of affords us. But to sort of, I want to also intertwine this with your previous question about why are we a slow fashion economy. I mean, historically, we've been agrarian, right? We haven't had the Industrial Revolution until much later come to us with, UK bringing it's the garbage that it sold to us after taking cotton from us. Everything that we made, we clothed the whole country without electricity. We made clothes, the handloom, the pit loom don't consume any electricity. All of it was made in daylight. So even if you had no electricity in your house, that was fine. All the water that was used in softening the cotton or in dyeing was rain harvested or, naturally collected, because irrigation came much later. All the dyes we used came from spices, fruits like pomegranate, vegetables. I mean, it was just so idyllic and vibrant, because it wasn't just stark cloth. It wasn't just something that covered us. We were quite chic with what we wore, And then, of course, the royal patronage that sort of blessed us with, they were the original influencers, right? I mean, whatever the nobility did and the kings and queens wore sort of petered down to the rest of the populace. And that was our, Bollywood, and craft, all sorts of craft, embroideries, textiles, muslins, jewelry, beautiful objects, everything thrived much before the British came. And then everything sort of started going downhill. Most of it sort of came from the cities that were coastal, where the East India Company sort of brought its manufactured goods and took from India, the supply chain that India's pretty much became. When the British were here, the East India Company took 90% of the world's clothing, cotton clothing came from India. All of it was manufactured outside London, in Manchester, and all those Lancaster and all those industrial towns outside London, and sold to the whole world. So what we made and what we grew, what we farmed, really address the whole world. I mean, that's really the foundation of what India does so fantastically, right? What do we make best? It's not a tractor or a kettle, it's cloth, right? It's cotton. And I can't escape this story to explain to us, how vital textile, nature, history, globalization via the British, all of it is connected just simply because of cotton, and I love this. And it puts us in the most moot position, like I feel in world economics or geopolitics or something like that. We dress the world. I mean, how amazing is that, right?
And it's very spiritually, progressive in many ways. Just to add to your point there, and I feel like in every way, in every realms of life, I was reading that you've been to the J. Krishnamurti school, and my father went to J. Krishnamurti school as well. So I came from a very alternate thinking right from a very young age as well. And I realized that people in India were inherently always very alternate in their thinking. What is today we're looking at as alternate was actually the way of living. Do you also feel so?
I think all indigenous communities, the world over, all people who lived in close proximity with nature have always been mindful in their consumption, in their production, in their understanding that there is a very fragile system that supports all life on earth and that it's all connected by one thing, and I think Namrata said it so poignantly. I think it was the Industrial Revolution and the advent of globalization that created a very capitalist and consumerist economy globally that I think in many ways has been so pervasive in destroying our basic understanding that everything that we eat, we wear, we use in our everyday life comes from the earth and needs to go back to the earth in a form that is natural and safe and healthy for the planet. And that's something that all traditional or all, grassroots people have known well. And now you can call it spiritual, you can call it evolved, you can call it conscious, you can call it anything. But the fact of the matter is, those populations in the world that still manage to remain detached or not entangled in this, web of consumerist, practices that are constantly driving you to consume more and more and be wasteful consumers. But the ability to step back and say, how can I be a mindful consumer? How can I be more conscious of what I'm wearing and using and applying as choices in my everyday life is what will separate one from the other. Of course, the world today needs every single person, apart from that 1% of the population that is destroying our planet, to become mindful and say that we are not going to be controlled by that 1% that defines what we should be eating, what we should be wearing, what we should be thinking, what we should be watching. We will define it for ourselves. And this is really taking things back into our own hands. And what many young environmentalists describe as democratization of choice.
And that's where I want to pivot to how the corporate sector is actually empowering change makers today and giving them that landscape and ability to grow. So Anju, as a designer, how do you feel about investments in investments in designers, investments in design houses, and corporatization of crafts today?
See, while yes, While I was chasing this, the developments in the village sectors, or the, I would rather say, beautiful areas of our country, I used to actually wish that some corporates should come forward and be partnered with the designers, because the designer used to be just a one-man army. They are developing, they are making, they are selling, and everything else. So the corporate coming along with the designer is a very, very good thing, very positive thing. But at the same time, the consciousness of not scaling up at the cost of slow life, slow version of the real meaning of the slow life. They should not risk that at the at the cost of the scaling up. So scaling up can happen with giving the right kind of a support for the marketing, for the making it affordable for the general consumer. But at the same time, one has to be conscious enough to get the right product from the weavers, from the artisans, and give them that support. So I till now I have a feeling, and I'm witnessing it also, that they are doing the same thing. What is the expected out of the corporates? But at the same time, in the name of pursuit of progress, one should not become robotic. One should be very aware and careful about these things. And at the same time, I think the consumers are also equally partner to the same thing. If they reject the certain things which are not biodegradable, if they are conscious of it while they are, like, we have to learn from the nature also. The way the nature is supporting the whole ecosystem. It is not consuming more than it needs. The tree doesn't have more than what it needs as water and things like that. Even the animals don't eat more than they don't, kind of hoard and just sit on it. So if we human beings become careful, conscious enough, and maybe that kind of learnings has to be done by certain, you people are doing, Bharadri is doing, and because you are also spreading that kind of an awareness. So if everything falls in the right kind of a equilibrium where consumers are aware, the corporates are helping the craftsmen. I'm thinking of a very, like the most perfect world. So things can happen the way it should happen.
What's your take, Namrata?
I have no romantic illusions about corporates helping anybody in craft.
No, I am.
Anju was being hopeful
Look at.
and completely utopian. The corporates are here because the bridal wear market is huge and designers are rock stars, as they are. They're here to take their designs and make very commercial, fully machine-made, very beautiful clothes, but we'll all be a pretty population for sure. We're not going to be craft rich or handloom driven or handmade driven or anything, and that's also okay. But the thing is that the idea of capitalism has to sort of change, right? And I feel especially grateful in India that we have CSR as a mandate, that every company has to sort of invest a certain amount in doing some sort of social impact related work, whether it's sports or it's, handloom or even if it's donating to an NGO. So I feel, that mandate sort of exists. And I know that Dia will tell you more that, the Fortune 500 companies or the top 1,000 listed companies in the stock exchange are soon going to have to come under the sustainability radar, where the environmental output and all of that is concerned. So policy-wise is really the way to keep craft alive. That said, what they've done for the weavers, the government has done for the weavers, is not very exciting because they've been included in the GST tax. People with no electricity have to pay 18% GST on whatever they make or produce. So, I mean, it's between 12 and 18% if they're just spinners or whether they're weavers.
5%. I'm not saying it should be paid, but it's 5% for the weavers.
No, it's 18%. It's 18%.
Okay, so there is a tax burden on.
Yes.
They were tax-free before GST. They were fully tax-free.
There is a tax burden, and I hear your view on this that the corporatization of it is going to make it inherently slow business. Uh, work.
But I'm sorry, one more point. In like I feel, if there's a big brand like Brunello Cucinelli, what they do in Italy, I don't know how many people have sort of heard it. It's this beautiful menswear cashmere brand, and it comes from a little village called Salomeo in Italy. And the gentleman who's the founder of the brand, Mr. Cucinelli, is still alive. He speaks no English and won't give me an interview, but he's adopted the whole village. He's employed the whole village. He's built the church, he's built a theater, every street is fixed, the wells are fixed. I mean, he's just turned it into this historic but fully up-to-date town. And I feel if individuals or corporates can sort of do that, put the respect back into rural India, sort of allow rural India to function the way it did function and still not sort of lose out, just lose out economically, then that sort of is a corporation or an entrepreneur that has, my respect.
I couldn't agree more with Namrata. I just want to quickly add to what she said. One is that there are individuals, and especially designers, who are working with grassroots communities and empowering artisans by not just giving them fair wages and healthy work environments, but also uplifting their lives and improving their livelihoods by creating infrastructures of support, which is educating their children, electrifying their homes, giving them access to clean drinking water, and other such things. Now, yes, in an ideal world, corporatization should mean that there is more social entrepreneurship visible than there is so far. But I think the pressure is tremendous now on the corporate world to change the manner of business. So what was a capitalism that was bereft of conscience is now tilting towards more conscious capitalism, wherein there are younger entrepreneurs who are taking matters into their own hands and are building businesses that care equally for people and for the planet. And I think it's the success of these businesses that will encourage more people to do this. But if you ask me, whenever I invest in a brand, a homegrown sustainable brand, the first trick question I ask them is, if a big multinational comes to you and offers you hundreds of crores or thousands of crores, will you sell? And if the answer is yes, I'm not going to invest in them.
So does scalability or sustainability play a bigger role for you? Because a lot of people, when they're investing scalability,
will instantly compromise on sustainability, because there is no way of scaling up and mass producing things that are done skillfully, mindfully, and slowly. They're not meant to be scaled up. So what needs to happen is better access, which is exactly what Namrata and Anju both said.
I want to pivot now a little bit to the couture segment in India and the bridal space. We've spoken about change makers and empowering change makers. But eventually it is the consumer who is going to make that individual decision for change across the board. Like you said, whether it is an individual, a small company, a large company, it is individuals who make that individual choice and then a collective choice, which influences corporates to come into place. So bridal is one of the biggest industries when it comes to couture. And how's the Indian consumer? The wedding industry is becoming bigger and bigger, and in my view, more wasteful. Last week, when we were talking, and we had this discussion on couture, and I said, I'm somebody who would like to get married in my home, wear probably something that belonged to my grandmother. My grandmother was Sindhi, with this beautiful white sari and gold embroidery, and she got married in that, and I'm very happy wearing that and not being wasteful. But there is an industry, and everybody in this social media frenzy to literally post the next big look.
Hello, I have 2 words for you. They are Mirza.
Oh yeah,
She had the ideal wedding.
yes.
I want to get married again. I don't care to who. And do it just the way she did it.
And I had lunch today with a friend of mine who did your wedding, by the way, Ashna.
Yes. So I just told her this afternoon she'd be doing my wedding too.
It was round two, so just better awareness had crept in by then. I think I was able to make better choices. But you're so right, Sachi. You know, I look around me. So the government of India recently launched something called Mission Life, which is supposed to be 17 interventions or steps that individuals can take to lead a better lifestyle for the environment. And my first question to the ministry when they, shared this plan with me was, I hope you're reaching out to high net worth individuals with this plan because aspiration is created top down. It's when people with a lot of money, and India has always reveled in especially from the Quit India movement, right? There's been so much respect and credibility offered to those who have lived with austerity. And I think in some way or the other, that austerity was also a reflection of the inequality that we were contending with, which continues to exist. In fact, it has been exacerbated by climate and COVID-19 and many such other issues that we're dealing with. And why is it so that today the most powerful, the most wealthy families in our country refuse to recognize that we're living through a triple planetary crisis, that their choices can define so many more choices, and that the idea of aspiration that they need to create in people's minds should be one of simplicity and genuinity and goodness and compassion and empathy.
Anjuji meets a lot of the brides. I think she'll be able to answer this.
I think this is one moment. No. In fact, I they should, because I do believe in it. And I think it is one moment in each girl's life when they are marrying, and they are marrying for, happiness ever after kind of a mindset. So when we are doing these rituals of ours in our, the way the culture has been, that you take the Agni Feras and you do all those ritualistic stuff, which they do follow. No one is going for the white wedding and just signing the register. Everybody would like to have that kind of a omen and those kind of followed up these rituals to make their life happy. So in those kind of emotive moments, they do go for traditional one, which they come to me with the traditional attire, the lehengas, the woven Banarasis, and those beautiful, velvet jackets or dupattas and everything like that. So I do specialize in that. So I am dressing the brides in that. And if they are wanting to do away with something which is not so traditional, I say, well, I will give you the handloom fabric. I can give you the pastels. I can give you even off-whites, which people are going for. But at least with me, I will give you the hand-woven and handmade stuff. So they are very happy with it. So my business is not going to go away. If Diya Mirza is the kind of person who will do what she's doing with her, special moments. So I think I know that, yes, and you looked so beautiful.
But
In
it's
fact,
it's also such a cultural thing, right? Luxury is like culturally ingrained in us, right? I mean, even if the simplest homes of people who work for us, they'll wear simple clothes and have very humble salaries, but they will wear real gold earrings, real gold nose rings. I mean, I don't even think the West sort of wears real gold. I mean, very few people do that. They will have real silk sari and stuff like that. So I think historically the idea of dressing up, mehendi and jewelry and shingar and all of that is very special to us. And also on our wedding day, again, we sort of ape the king and the queen, right? We sit like Raja and Rani on oaths and get married, and we pretend that we're Raja Rani for the day, palki and ghoda and all on hire and that whole band, and it's fun. It's escapist, it's make-believe, it's ritualistic, traditional, all of that, and it makes us happy. It's also pressure, it's pop culture. Good pressure. No?
Honestly, what do we need to acknowledge and recognize that the world can't afford this kind of, these kind of choices, and we just need to become more mindful in them. Not saying don't celebrate the artisan, don't celebrate the heritage. Of course, buy those garments that have legacy and enjoy your moment deeply. But we're talking about weddings that go into thousands and thousands of people, run into numbers of like many days. It's not just a wedding anymore, it's much more than that. And then therein lies the irony or the paradox of the times that we live in.
I'm glad you said that, because may not be the most politically correct thing for me to say, but when I do see those number of wedding functions and the number of changes and the amount of wastefulness, I think it doesn't sit well when we're living actually in a country that's largely living in poverty. And it's an extremely disturbing thought for me at a very individual level when I say that. And Dia, I don't know how you feel about this, but when we talk about these things so passionately and we say these things so publicly, there's also a typecast of becoming an activist. And you're just...
We are activists.
No, but
There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it. But
I won't have Indian tequila.
Marginalized.
I won't have Indian tequila at a wedding. That's where I draw the line.
I'm with you on that.
It's fine to be called, labeled an activist. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a label we should wear with pride. And gone are the times when such labels were meant to demean and discredit and undervalue the voice of an individual, and especially a woman.
And I think there are a lot of alternate designs.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I wear that label very proudly, especially, starting a business very young in sustainability and working with designers at different levels. I think one of the first tags that came to me was, being alternate and being sidelined as not being, just being marginalized. So I think more power to you and more power to all of you on this panel. I would love to sum up we're running out of time now. So
We just got started.
did we? You want to carry on? We can. But closing thoughts. We'll start with you, Namrata.
I just think, shopping from your heart is really the way to go. When I make a purchase, the first thing I ask myself and of the brand is, how much are you paying the smallest person or the lowliest person on your supply chain? And I do think that being handmade, hand-loomed, hand-woven, handcrafted, supporting rural economy and scale is possible. Two brands do it beautifully. They're both privately owned. They have no funding from investors or government, Fab India, as well as Anoki. We may like their products, we may not like their products. Some we like, some we don't like. But there's, over 1,000 crore companies, both of them. And Fab India was going to have this IPO that they're holding on to very tightly for a very long time. So it is really about finding a company and an entrepreneur, whatever your size is, finding that sweet spot, where you have organic growth, where you do scale, but you do it slowly and you invest back into the business properly and you pay your fair wages and you give respectful wages. Fair wages don't exist in India. The poverty line doesn't sort of exist in India. It keeps changing depending on who's the government in power. But we know that nobody should make less than 10,000 rupees a month, right? Whether they live in a city or a village, it's completely not sustainable for any family to sort of live in that little money. So whatever we buy, whether it's Indian or not Indian, or a designer brand, or we're buying closest to source from a weaver directly, we just need to know how much money goes down to the smallest person in that group. Yeah.
Anjuji.
Working. So, Namrata, you have said it all. What should be the totally beautiful world, around us. So, as a designer, I would like to go for the theory of interdependence And that's how the nature is also, where as a human being, it's not only textile, it's not only fashion, it's somewhere where, like we as human beings, we are there. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was the, our legacy, which we have understood from our childhood times, and even in our own culture, in our own scriptures, etc. We do follow this. So this is, as a designer, this is my part, which I would like to carry on, giving the designs to the artisans. I'm not elevating myself as I am giving. In fact, I feel that I'm gaining a lot from our craftspeople. Not only me, the whole fashion world, the designers are actually gaining a lot from the craftspeople. They are the people who are supporting us. So I would like to kind of bring the artisans and craftspeople and the designers and the consumers, everybody on the equal platform. No one is doing anything kind of a thing where, okay, I'm giving you the design, now you are giving me the fabrics and clothes, and I'm giving you the fair wages. I would like to have that kind of a ethos in the whole of everybody's mindset. Okay, we are interdependent. You are doing something. I have got this talent of giving you certain new ideas. You have the knowledge to do it technically, do what they do, which I can't do. The craft is, they are learning this kind of a technique from their ancestors, from their elders since ages, and there is no school for any craft teaching in our country. There is no university. All the NID and NIFT people have to go to the craftsmen only to learn that. So I feel they have a very indigenous knowledge of this, and not only textile. If we are talking about architecture, utensils, all those meenakaris and the jewelry and so many other areas. Even if we are talking about our music, our classical music. So each and every field, we are carrying a huge legacy of beautiful, aesthetically correct, knowledge of so many other art and craft and so many other areas. So I would like that as my role in this particular sector, where I am able to design certain things, and then I can be the mediator to bring it to the consumers. So I keep on carrying on this with the feeling that we are all supporting each other, with the consciousness along with it, that okay, if the consumer is wanting to have that, I'm the person who is getting it made. So, and I'm wanting the weavers also and the artisans also to become, a step further. So I'm giving them patterns, I'm teaching them how they can make the flat fabric, straightforward fabric into a garment or a skirt or a trousers. So I'm doing all that in a way, in my whatever capacity I have, in my silent way. So that's the desire in my heart, which I can carry on till whenever I'm working in this area.
Dia?
What do you want me to say?
I mean, what I hear from everybody is equity. For equity and parity, we need every stakeholder.
Yes. So we need partnerships. We just need stronger partnerships and participation. I think we should never undermine and underestimate the power and the value of individual choice. So next time you want to own a garment, read the label, understand the brand, understand the source of not just the textile and the embroidery, but also understand what Namrata pointed out to, which is this a space that really offers an inclusive, holistic approach and is really empowering the lives of those people and communities that are connected with creating and crafting the garment. So ask yourself, what's the story of what I want to wear? Where does it come from? And how long and how many years of my life will I be able to cherish and enjoy this? Let's go back to being the kind of people that loved inheriting our great-grandmother's saris, who loved to restore them and reinvent them and reinterpret them and continue to use them, whether it was as wall hangings that adorned our homes, or were cut into beautiful smaller pieces of garments that we could wear as children for weddings. I think it's important to go back to being more mindful. And I really hope that young India, who is exposed to Western media and Western fashion, truly learns to celebrate and recognize the richness and the beauty of our craft and its diversity, and they embrace it and wear it just as much. I want to just share a small example before I wrap this up. I wore this beautifully hand-stitched pantsuit to the UN General Assembly last year. It was red, and the thread work was kutch work in white. And practically every third person on my walk from 3 streets away to the UN headquarters stopped me and just gaped at the garment and said, "This is incredible." Now, why did that happen? It happened because I think when you wear the story and the story of people, and carry the heritage of craft, it is bound to make heads turn, because there is nothing more powerful than the legacy of those garments and that handwork and that textile. And also because it's not a part of fast fashion. It's not something that everybody sees everywhere and where everybody looks like a prototype of each other. So I think the most beautiful way to define your authenticity is to identify clothing and textile that reflects your individual ethos.
Absolutely, and so interesting that you just said this, because this jacket that I'm wearing is actually by House of Hindi, and the designer sitting right there, Anad Bhular. And so many people this evening have complimented me on this, and this is actually a handloom piece, very contemporary. And I remember chatting with Namrata a few days ago, and she asked me, what are you wearing, Saachi? And I sent her this piece, and then I sent her a few more options from her, and she said, wow, these designers are doing such an incredible job with just handloom. So I think it is, as everybody summed it up so beautifully, and Yudhya, that it is about individual choice. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. Thank you, Namrata, Anju, Diya, for taking out the time, and for always so passionately giving your voice to this very important and integral subject. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you to a wonderful audience who's been here today.
Some questions want to be asked. Please do.
Effectively, these garments all the conference.
That's
Asking your question and yours, when you say scalability, affordability, and coming back to awareness to the youth, how do you match that? Because these garments are not affordable. They're very expensive, your fabrics. And if you want to make it aware to all the people to use it, sustainability in a normal garment is 40%.
So I always give the example of cost versus price. And I think the more we inform consumers about that, the better. And the sooner we do it, the better. I'll explain cost and price to you.
Yes, just one.
What is the cost of the garment? You say it's more, 40% more than the cost of a fast fashion garment, right? But what is the price that we pay by investing in those garments? We are creating, landfills of clothing that can cover the full circumference of entire nations. We are wasting, the textile and the fast fashion industry are more polluting than even the aviation industry. There is absolutely no limit to the level of wastefulness and the kind of toxicity, pollution, and damage that the fast fashion industry is creating. So that is the difference the consumer needs to discover. And the moment that happens, and it's happening, that understanding is spreading. It's not spreading at the rate that it needs to, but more and more people are discovering that I would rather buy 3 things less and own 1 thing that is better for the planet than buy 20 things of which I'm going to possibly wear 1 or 2, and the rest are just going to sit around my cupboard for years and then eventually get discarded. Having said that, I think India is not as wasteful as many other parts of the world. We at least pass clothes on. So even with fast fashion, I know it goes to, younger people who want to wear it, etc. But why? Why create? The problem is that the demand for fast fashion has been created by an industry that wants to make you think you are inadequate if you are not wearing the latest style. That's how the story changes when we. Yeah.
Cost. This is one. Yeah, we can take this otherwise.
Also, the cost versus the value. I mean, I may buy a shirt that costs 500 rupees, but it may have cost you 80 rupees to make. And I don't want to wear an 80 rupee shirt. I may want to wear something that's more special and gives me greater joy or more value. But having said that, I don't want to diss your question at all, because what you're saying is absolutely right. And the challenge that this country faces is how to make beautiful, handloom, handcrafted, hand grown clothing priced at even 5,000 rupees or less, because that's the sweet spot where most of us can. I mean, if my daily outfit should cost me about 5,000 rupees, I can't wear clothes that cost 20,000. I can, but I won't wear clothes that cost 20,000 rupees a day. I mean, it's not sustainable to have a wardrobe like that. So if we find like an OK and Fab India, they do make not great clothes, but they make handmade and hand-loomed most
I love their clothes. I love their clothes.
I mean, hit and miss. I think Anoki more than Fab India clothes, but anyway. Yeah, so if we get to like a 3,000 to 5,000 price range, then we're set. And I think organic growth is really the way to do it. If you want a factory and you want to have profits within 5 years and 10 years, then maybe not. But I think if your business grows and you put it back into the business and then you employ more people and your profits are not as severe as 80 rupees to 500 rupees, then we can change the game,
Yeah, but this cost versus price difference people really don't care.
Yeah.
Because the consumer just doesn't.
Most consumers have no idea what is going into their garments. The day that changes is going to be a significant shift.
and
it's
the
beginning to
plastic,
change.
microplastics.
Just to add to this, I feel like what are we comparing it with? There's always this cost question, this that we're paying X amount more to you for a sustainable garment, but then you're comparing it with fast fashion, and there's no comparison to make there.
But that's the problem, right? Because the consumer is ill-informed.
Absolutely.
Well, I would like to add here that it's actually, if it is a biodegradable product, if the yarns are used, which are like cotton, and even I have worked with a company called Tencel Lensing, so they make yarns out of the wood shavings, things like that, and then it's made in the power loom. So it's not always necessary to adapt the technology in the right way with a conscious, aware idea of making the world more livable and not created the landfills. So there are options which I think you must be aware of. And at the same time, if we do certain hand embroidery, which is very beautiful, yes, but if we adapt the technology and do it by computers or by machine, it is also sustaining to a certain community. It's not against sustainability, according to me. So if we are doing that, but the point is that it should not hurt the earth. So that is where my take is, that if we are adapting it and making it much more affordable to a much more, but with a conscious, like a complete stance that, well, the profit has to be in a fair game. Everything is
Absolutely.
in the same.
Absolutely. I think we're done with questions. Thank you, everyone, for being such a wonderful audience today. And we can get up for pictures. And
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.